common misconception in India that go to this college or that college and then you're set.
That even if you get to the best of the IIT, it's not 100% placement. Average performance is better than others, and that's what education system sort of drives overall.
How you build UpGrad into the institution that it is.
Finally came to a framework of tracking transition, how the candidates do after completion of the program. We now have about 6 centers at BorderPlus. We are training our nurses to get educated on German language and then skills to move abroad.
How do you really crack a global GTM in your perspective?
For a lot of founders, building a B2B SaaS business needs to be something that they're looking at from a global market perspective. Education happens as a success because of the word of mouth of the outcomes that you deliver. That it is a significant scale up, and then the tank up happens because the outcomes don't end up coming.
Hey, I'm Sanya and welcome to Founders Cut. Today we have a very special guest with us who's also an alumni from the same school. We have Mayank. Mayank is the co-founder of one of the most respected and one of the largest EdTech companies in India, UpGrad, and he's recently moved on to now giving Indian talent, especially in the healthcare sector, global mobility opportunities at BorderPlus. And we're here in his office today and I'm very excited to introduce Mayank.
Hi.
Thanks, Mayank. Welcome to the podcast and thanks for making the time.
No, thank you for having me. I just, because you started by introducing UpGrad as EdTech, which is my pet peeve. Because for me, when you call it EdTech, then a lot of focus goes on tech. And it becomes more secondary. So for me, it's always been an education company. It's always been an education company. But a lot of people look at the ecosystem as EdTech and sort of paint it under the same brush.
That's an interesting note. And do you think is that why, like maybe that understanding and that philosophy has been core to UpGrad, and that's why it's been a
so I think
strong
for us,
factor for success?
For us, always it has been about education first, and technology is a lever to scale up the education. But in education, see, there are a couple of things that people sometimes misunderstand, and therefore they start focusing a lot on technology and not on education, and therefore the focus goes a lot on experience and how people should feel and get it out. But look, education is like mutual fund. अगर 100 रुपए दिया है तो वापस चाहिए. And therefore, if you're thinking of it as an education, as a mutual fund, or sometimes it's like an insurance product, that if something bad happens, I have something to protect and fall back on. So if you think of education as mutual fund or insurance, then you have to focus a lot on outcomes. A mutual fund will not come and tell you that, look, you will get great set of companies and it's very easy for you to invest. The mutual fund will come and say, okay, invest in this and I will deliver you return. And therefore, sometimes our focus on EdTech moves away from education outcome to something else, which is not very important, but in the initial days, it seems more glamorous. And that's why people sometimes misunderstand education from that context.
Fair enough. That's very interesting. But how do you then draw outcomes like you drew a parallel with the mutual fund industry, right? Over there, the returns are a little immediate or more trackable as well, right? Like you can see your money going up or down with time and modify accordingly. In a sector like education, the returns do come maybe a few years later.
It's not Maggie, it's not instant gratification.
Exactly. So how do you think about that?
No, so that's the reason why education requires patience. And I think every great education product globally, the school that you went to, ISB has a significant amount of fees compared to other business schools. But a lot of folks still choose ISB because they believe that the outcomes will come. Now, the outcomes don't come in 1 year's time or 6 months' time or sort of 6 days' time. You have to stay on for 1 year to see the result.
It's compounding.
It's compounding, and therefore education happens as a success because of the word of mouth of the outcomes that you deliver. I don't know which year you chose to join ISB.
I graduated in 2020, so 19 to 20 I was there.
So let's say 2020, it had about close to 19 or 20 years of history for you to take a judgment call that, look, this is what I would like to invest in.
Absolutely.
Similarly, in mutual funds, sometimes you go back to the history before you invest in it to see, okay, last 6 years, how has it done? Has it performed better than the Sensex or has it performed better than the index? And then you choose that particular fund to invest in. And that's what education is about.
I also think it's a common misconception in India that, people think that, okay, go to this college or that college and then you're set. You're not actually set.
No,
Your
you're not
journey
set.
actually starts
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And then to your point, like you rightly said, it's just about working harder every day, but you've got a certain pedigree, let's say,
Correct.
attached to it.
It's a pedigree, and I think the other way to say this is that it's a big boys club membership. It is a caste system. In India, I think a lot of times you ask surnames and all, and you
Yes.
sort of start finding, okay, oh, this is this caste. Education is like that. You don't know the other person really well. So the first question you ask them, okay, where did you study from? If he or she says a certain institution name, you form a perception, oh, must be this, must be good,
Yes.
must be average, must be hardworking. So educational institution it breaks the information asymmetry. If you don't know everything about the person, you just ask which institution and you form a lot of information which otherwise you would not get. And that's why education is respected from that context, because people have this sense that if you have gone to this institution, you must mean something.
Correct.
And that's what institutions stand for.
It's validation.
Yeah, it's
in a way,
validation
right?
for that context. But unfortunately, over a period of time, it has become that if you go to this institution, then you definitely stand for that. But not, as you rightly said, not everybody stand for that. And therefore, it creates sometimes dissonance that even if you get to the best of the IIT, it's not 100% placement.
Yes.
You maybe 80%, 85% get placed, 15% still don't end up getting placed. But we don't talk about that. But in general, average performance is better than others, and that's what education
Correct.
system sort of drives overall.
It gives you maybe a better shot
Yeah,
at reaching
yeah.
where you wanted to.
Correct. At least gives you a seat on the table. So many people come and says that, look, degrees are obsolete and degrees will become redundant. I believe so. But my take is that you should not ask the question why is degree not getting redundant, or why is degree getting redundant, or should degree get redundant. You should ask the question, why has degrees remained for the last thousands of years?
Yeah.
And what's the reason why it has not changed? So sometimes as founders, and many founders building something innovative start thinking, I will disrupt this.
Yes.
But the fundamental question to ask is, before you figure out how, that you will disrupt this, just understand why has it been happening for such a long period of time, and why is this the right way of doing things versus disruption that we keep talking about.
Does it even need disruption?
Yeah, does it even need disruption?
The depth to which you're giving these insights, right? Like right from the social fabric of this country. Do you think that is something that maybe a lot of people in the EdTech space have gotten wrong over the last few years? And not just EdTech, rather education, because the larger education piece, right? K-12, IIDJ coaching, etc. I mean, there's a lot of problem of misaligned incentives, a lot of stress in those ecosystems. So do you think these are some factors which...
I think there have been very good sort of outcomes in the education space. Many companies have built something of scale. But sometimes, there's no, it's not a rocket science. If too much money flows in, then of course incentives will get misaligned. If you are putting in so much money into a sector which does not need that much money, because education is a negative working capital business.
You actually get the money upfront.
Yeah, you get paid upfront. And then you sort of ensure that you are delivering the services. So it's a negative working capital business. It's like what Unilever is. It's what like some of the larger companies are. So therefore, it does not need external capital. But when you flow in that much capital, you end up having bad behavior. And that sometimes leads to wrong choices. But again, I would not say that the founders are at fault or the investors are at fault. It is but obvious. I mean, any sector, if you put in that kind of capital, you will see some bad behavior, and that happened in education sector as well. But having said that, it's such a large sector, it's such a high impact sector that you will see many great founders building phenomenal institutions, because this sector requires a dosage of technology, a dosage of new thought process to create an innovative way of learning in the ecosystem. So I think definitely that change will happen. But in the journey, yes, will there be some ups and downs? Of course, there's going to be ups and downs in the process.
How has this shaped how you've built UpGrad into the institution that it is, surviving, scaling, and doing so well? And let's say when you speak about outcomes, what are the outcomes or the North Stars that you track? Is it placements? Is it satisfaction of the students? I mean, how do you go about this?
Yeah, no, I think for us, as you rightly said, outcomes was the driver for us to figure out that where we have to head up. And we wanted to be in a place where it is a core part of somebody's education. We don't want it to be supplementary education, because if it is supplementary, it's difficult to scale. So we said, okay, we'll focus on outcomes. And here's a funny story. When we started focusing on outcomes, we said one of the first North Star metric should be completion rates. So if you look at education history, right, and let's go back 2005, 2006, maybe 2008, 9 when MOOCs first came in. There was a concept of massive open online courses,
Yes.
and everybody's jumped into the bandwagon, and they said, okay, MOOCs has come in after YouTube.
Yeah.
So you will have access to all sorts of content.
Yeah. It changed the game.
It changed the
completely.
games. And then New York Times wrote an article in 2009 or 10, which was the era of MOOCs, or the birth of MOOCs. Then 2011, they wrote an article called The Death of MOOCs. And then 2012 or 13, they wrote an article of Resurrection of MOOCs. So the problem that people were chasing at that point of time, if you look at the history of education, was they were trying to solve for the problem of access.
Correct.
They said
and
you don't
democratizing
education.
Yeah.
That you don't have access to content, you can
Correct.
get access from MIT, Stanford, IITs, IIMs, etc.
Yes.
But access was not a major problem because you had access to all sorts of content from books. You could buy any books.
Absolutely.
And you can read the books, and people don't go to the universities for the libraries it had, but they go for the entire infrastructure and the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I think the choice there was, I will disrupt education by access, never realizing that education access was already getting solved by libraries. In that context, MOOCs became a glorified library, a glorified content library. Then newer age entrepreneurs came and said, okay, that's great, but now I need to chase completion.
Yes.
Because people start the course, they don't complete the course, it's just like a library. And then everybody started focusing on completion. But completion without outcomes also is a vanity metric. Yes, you can have more people completing, but it's not the case. So when we started early on at UpGrad, we focused a lot on completion because we were also naive. We said, look, MOOCs is not doing the job and I need to do the job and I will focus on completion. We focus on completion, and then we realized the completion is not the best metric to track. Then we said we should focus on NPS because the startup ecosystem, everybody chased NPS. And we said, okay, we should choose Net Promoter Score. And we looked at Net Promoter Score during the course of the program. We were at 50, 60, 45, 70. So we're very happy because even Harvard is at like 35 or 40 in terms of NPS. So we said, great, NPS is very good. Then we realized that NPS is also a vanity metric because NPS is like going to a spa and you get a massage and the masseuse asks you, how's the spa? You say, great. And then you go back home after 3 days and you say, no, kuch theek nahi lag raha hai.
Yeah, it's the same.
It happens the same in education, that during the course of education, you all enjoy it.
Correct.
But when it comes to placements, outcomes and others, you don't enjoy it as much. So then we said, okay, we should measure NPS 6 months post-completion. And that's why we finally came to a framework of tracking transition, which is movement in jobs, career acceleration, which is growth in your designation, and professional confidence, whether you're able to lead a large team and so on and so forth. So we started tracking under the framework of TAP, how the candidates do after completion of the program. And those are the metrics that we started chasing as our North Star, that look, what is the outcome? And even bigger part of outcome story is referrals and repeats. How many referrals do you get? How many word of mouth you get? And how many repeats you get? And those became our North Star over a period of time. So I think in education, it's a long story short, it was chasing vanity metric of access, then chasing vanity metric of completion. But the real metric for people to choose is outcomes and delivering on results, because that's what consumers come to you to learn any program with.
Like you said, right, on the word of mouth piece also, I think word of mouth is one of the biggest contributing factors.
30%, 40% of our revenue comes from there.
Because you always see that, okay, family mein, this person went to this college, so now this is what they're doing in life. And that's how the credibility, I think, also builds, right, in India at least. So how have you approached both the build and the GTM side of UpGrad, right? Like the kind of partners that you chose to bring on the platform, and also the go-to-market. Like, what was your strategy in early days?
So we had a lot of, So on this one, we had a lot of handicaps. We were starting the program in online space and nobody was willing to pay for online. And we said, look, we will provide outcomes. And therefore, our journey was, we will start a program which is priced, an entrepreneurship program at 50,000 and data science program at 2 lakh. So everybody said, look, you guys are foolish, stupid. It's completely counterintuitive. If you have to do online program, it should be free or cheap, and it should be very short. So we said, instead of free or cheap, we said we'll price it at 2 lakh. Instead of short, we will of 1 month or 2 months, we will keep it to about 12 months. So I think we took these counterintuitive calls because we felt if you take those decisions, you will be able to deliver outcomes, because 2 mahine mein nobody can learn data science. And in 500 rupees, you can't even pay the teachers to deliver the outcomes. So we said, okay, these two things are what we need. And therefore, there was handicap. It was long duration program. It was expensive program, a lot of hurdles. And therefore, for GTM, and this is useful for many entrepreneurs who are starting up, that if you don't have credibility of your own, then you need to borrow credibility and build with that. So we borrowed credibility with partnerships.
Got it.
We partnered with phenomenal institutions like
Yes.
IIT Bangalore, MICA, and some of the
Yes.
leading BITS, Pilani, so on and so forth, because that gave us some rub-off effect. They said, who's UpGrad? Nobody knows UpGrad. What do? You teach data science, but give me some more. We said we have partnered with Flipkart, we have partnership with Zomato, etc. So all these great companies had some case studies happening with us, but it never came up in the format of, okay, having done all of these things, still credibility was lacking. So we partnered, and that was our initial GTM, that we will build credibility by partnership if we do not have it on our own. And over a period of time, we started building our own credibility, and partnership remained an integral part of our credibility building. So I think many founders sometimes feel that they can do everything on their own. Not the best approach. If you lack something, get that thing by partnerships and collaboration, because those are important ways in which you can fast track your GTM.
That's very interesting. And sort of linking that to trust aspect, right? Education is also
High on
a game
trust,
of,
yeah.
it's a high on trust
Yeah.
thing. And UpGrad has built the brand it has. Do you want to maybe share a few insights on that? On how, especially because in consumer businesses, brand is critical.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the most, I would say, toughest to track.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How is it getting made? Like, how do you really know when your brand is getting made or it's made?
Brand to me, to that question, Sanya, is that what is it that people talk about you behind your back? That's what brand means to me. What is it that they feel this entity is? And for that, the best ambassadors are your students and the people who are graduating from the program. So while we advertise heavily to create awareness, it was not brand building. It was just still awareness building. For us, a lot of brand building initiative happened with the testimonials that we got from our candidates, from our sort of students and our learners. The kind of these podcasts that we did, that helped a lot in brand building, because we were able to authentically tell our story rather than in the form of a brand campaign or marketing campaign. In the journey of UpGrad, we did get Mr. Bachchan as one time the brand ambassador. We did get Vicky Kaushal as one of our brand ambassadors, etc. But all that I realized was just awareness. And I think awareness has nothing to do with brand.
Very interesting.
Brand is what you stand for as a product, and brand is what people will talk about you behind your back. And for that, you need real users talk about their stories to the outside world. The real conversations like this, where you can authentically tell what you stand for and what you're doing. And also a lot of work that you do in PR. Because PR is also, sometimes founders feel that it's, why do I need to PR? And I think they should understand that PR is a very integral part of how you tell your own story. Don't take PR as a thing which is, I don't want to touch PR because PR is, it has to be paid or it has to be do this. If you tell your genuine story, a good journalist will always come back to you for your insights and for your value, for your quotation, etc. So I think we invested on these three really heavily, which is our own learners and their testimonials, what we do with sort of these podcasts and these conversations, and PR as integral part of brand building. But campaigns were largely for awareness.
No, that's very interesting. And I think PR gives you the opportunity to tell your own story, right? Yeah. Which is very important for young founders as they're starting out.
There's a thing that I've seen young, old founders, and again, there's no right and wrong. If a journalist calls and they say, okay, why don't you tell me response to this question? They say, okay, let me quickly get back with a response. Because a lot of founders are sometimes afraid that they may end up speaking something that they should not be speaking and go beyond it. And therefore, a lot of the responses are scripted by the PR team.
Yes.
That they will say, okay, ye bolo, this is the quote, and this quote should go in. Which is fine if you don't have time. But I've always felt that if there's a quote to be given,
it should be your voice.
It should be your voice, and you should, if you are filtering it, then there's something that you're hiding. And therefore, it's not genuine and it's not authentic. I have, as part of my own sort of this thing, I have many journalist friends. They reach out to me for obvious questions, and I have not said, okay, I will now give you a structured response, because then I have lost trust with them. Then they will not reach out to me for any other conversation. And these are important because then you're not trying to hold back anything.
Yeah.
If you don't want to say, you just say, okay, it's off the record, I don't want to talk about it, and they will appreciate it. But the more you try to sugarcoat it, the more you try to make it, the more you add cosmetics, it sometimes don't feel real, and then the brand does not feel real.
I mean, authenticity is like I think data shows that now people are valuing authenticity. So I get it. You didn't even see the questions that we're asking today. So I think
so I have a phobia. I have a phobia, like not a phobia, but I think I have a pet peeve that I don't want to see questions. And I've never seen any of my podcasts myself.
Oh wow, that's very interesting, and that's very candid of you to share that. You mentioned impact a couple of times, and that's something I want to touch upon. When you're in a space like UpGrad, and now even with BorderPlus, right? You're not just enabling people to get jobs. You're actually sort of uplifting lives. Is that what drives you? Like, what really drives you, and what are the kind of stories that have shown you the kind of impact that you're making?
See, I think I can make it very emotional and very glamorize the entire thing, but I don't want to get into this. But so this was something, my co-founder Ravi, with whom we started UpGrad, he at that point of time was building something in Chile. And he was sort of working and figuring out what kind of venture he wants to build. And that's the time Insta and everything was sort of emerging. So he came and told me that, look, Mayank, I never want to build a photo sharing app. And he said it in jest, but he had a deeper meaning to that, which he meant that, look, I want to do work which can lead to impact, which can help somebody, and which can see a significant upside in that human potential. I think education and healthcare are two such sectors where you can make real impact from that context. I think every sector has it, but with no offense to any other sector, let's say, for example, if you call for a food from a food delivery app, the food lands up at your place. It has made your life convenient. You ordered idli dosa, but you got khichdi. You will crib about it, and then you will forget about it.
Yeah.
If you are waiting for a cab to come and you have to ask for a cab hailing app, the car says 5 minutes, but it is coming after 15 minutes or 30 minutes, you will again crib about it, and then you forget about it. But especially in education and healthcare, you cannot crib and complain. If you paid a significant amount of money for your education and you did not get the result, you will remember it for the rest of your life. If you go for a healthcare and the operation went sideways, you will have an impact for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's where education and healthcare, to me, for these two sectors, and again, to that extent, even financial services, these are high impact sectors, and you cannot mess up.
And high trust sectors.
It's high trust sector. If you mess up on this, the person will remember you for the rest of their life. So when I onboard anybody at UpGrad and even at BorderPlus, I say that, look, if you're doing something, please remember that if you wrongly sell something, the person will be having a bad experience and they will remember you for the rest of your life. But remember that if you made the right promise, if you made the right commitments, if you gave a great experience and the person got a great outcome, they will again remember you for the rest of your life. So education is such business that you can go both the ways, that if you are not being honest, authentic, you will be remembered badly. But if you do everything right, you will always remember with fond memories that that guy who interviewed me and that guy who counseled me gave me a great advice to do this program. And I've seen the result of this program for my career in the future. And that's the beauty of education. And therefore, there are many stories like this. I think at BorderPlus just recently, it was quite a heartwarming story because these girls who come from nursing background, they are not, let's say, the most coming from a very sort of high on economic strata of the society. So this one girl came and said, look, she got the offer and she was very happy that now I'm going to go to Germany. And then those interviews are there on camera, which these are not very easy to watch that first time. But she said a very interesting thing that, look, just before coming for this course, I lost my father. And on when he passed away, I promised him that I will go to Germany. So those stories is what sort of keeps us excited. This is just one story. And these are not, again, to make it like create an emotional drama around it. But for a lot of people, what you do in education and what you do in healthcare has a much broader impact than just the job that they're getting.
Correct.
Or the upside that they're getting. And it's not just them, but the entire family sort of sees a complete difference. That excites me, but that also puts a lot of pressure that you have to do the right thing. You can't do the wrong thing and sort of move on with it saying that, okay, now this is an easy sort of journey and take the course, pay the money, forget about it, nothing will happen to you and I will deliver the job. You have to be truthful with whatever that you do because that's where the real impact comes. And then you go home and you feel, chalo, aaj koi acha kiya.
I can only imagine the the level of contentment that you have and the pressures that you said it brings along. Like you said, it's very
movie
high
is a
emotion.
Superman or Spider-Man that with great responsibility or with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
That's what education and healthcare sectors are.
Yeah. No, I think that's very, very well put because they're very high on emotions. Like
there's
you
high
said,
on emotions, yeah.
Both positive and negative. It's extremely high on emotions. Like it's very rare that I think now that I think of my own at least healthcare experiences, right? It's very rare that you'll have like an average experience.
Yeah,
it's
can either go to side.
Yeah. It will be terrible.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And then sometimes you, in the quest of growth,
yes,
you do end up taking shortcuts, and those shortcuts are good for you to grow. But when the consumer feels after some time that, look, okay, why did I pay this money? Oh, no, it did not help me as much, is when it hits you that, look, okay, I think I should not have done this. Then the negative word of mouth is spiraling.
It's killer.
It's killer. Then you're just completely gone. And that's why education is not a hyper scale in that manner. You have to scale it up slowly, and then you have to deliver the results.
That's very interesting. Now that you're building BorderPlus, right? Like what really keeps you going? UpGrad is as large as it is in terms of scale, in terms of impact, everything. What really motivated you to go back to the drawing board, to go back to the basics and then start BorderPlus?
In hindsight, I should not have done it because in hindsight, it always, this again, rolling up the sleeves. That's why I'm now no longer wearing full sleeve shirts.
It's already rolled up.
Yeah, it's already rolled up. It's always tough because while at UpGrad, you had the entire ecosystem, the infrastructure. So you could have taken calls and there's a team to work around. Here, everything you have to do it again, grounds up. But again, as I said, like at UpGrad, even at BorderPlus, I'm fortunate to have great team members who are taking up a lot more responsibilities. While at UpGrad, I wanted to do something in the higher education space. The more that we've worked, the more I realized a lot of what I want to focus is on hardcore skilling in the areas of AI, machine learning, data science, MBAs, etc. I wanted to do something in the blue collar, grey collar space. But in the umbrella and the context of UpGrad, it's not that easy to do because again, we have a certain brand presence, a certain understanding in the mind of consumers that this is what you stand for. And that's why for me to do something in the blue collar, grey collar space, I wanted to, therefore I had to do it separately. And that's where the idea of BorderPlus came in. But the problem with blue collar, grey collar space in the context of India is that it's very difficult to make money. The output is not a very significantly high salaries, and therefore the consumers are not willing to pay that kind of premium that they would pay for, let's say, an MBA or a data science or a management kind of a program. And that's why I had to build this thought process that how do I take these blue collar workers and unlock their salary 10 times? And that's where the cross-border mobility thought process came in. That if you're a nurse in India, you earn 20, 30, 40,000 rupees. But if you go to Germany, you earn about 3 lakh, 4 lakh rupees a month. And that's where I felt that, look, if I can create a corridor, because look, you need to realize that India is the youngest population. Globally, everybody is aging with the declining productivity. Germany is at about 47, 48. Japan is at 50, 51. India is at 28, 29. And look, you have to also realize that India does not have too many natural resources. Yeah. We don't have coal, we don't have oil, we don't have too many of these natural resources. People are our largest sort of resource that we have. And people are moving abroad. And it is fragmented, it is unethical, the legal route itself is so tedious. Therefore, many people take the donkey route and go via the illegal means as well. Yeah. So I felt that, look, if you can create a steady platform where we can provide outcomes and provide the impact to these individuals, and that's how the thought of BorderPlus came in. But before starting BorderPlus, just exactly a year back, I was in Germany visiting hospitals and healthcare institutions just to see what is the situation there before even I formally launched BorderPlus. So I started meeting people. And there I realized that these are old age homes where everybody is 60, 70 plus and they're living there. And for many, they haven't met any of their family members for the last 3 years, 4 years, 5-year period. And this is the last phase of their life. And it's very lonely. Yeah. And that's why I felt that, look, these people also deserve care. So on one side, these people deserve better careers. On the other side, the individuals deserve the right care. And that's why I felt that BorderPlus has got its own outcome for both the sides of the ecosystem, for Indian talent and for the healthcare infrastructure in developed markets also. Where if you don't have the talent pool, then the care quality will suffer a lot in the process. Now
that you're building sort of like a two-sided network again, right? Like you're marrying demand and supply. Like you rightly said, we do have
talent pool.
We have a very good talent pool in India. What is the journey that you've thought of for both the nurses who are, let's say, upskilling and learning on BorderPlus, and then finding a job in Germany and then going about it? Like, how have you now thought about both demand and supply? Are you doing things a bit differently than UpGrad? Like, do you have lessons from there that you're bringing here?
Yeah, no, I think every time founders move from one to another, they always have lessons.
Yeah.
While we're doing this learning, this time we are, because language learning, and unlike, let's say, the hard skills that we had at UpGrad, therefore, a lot of focus is on offline teaching. So we now have about 6 centers at BorderPlus, which is in Pune, Chennai, Kochi, and Delhi, and one in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and one in Manila in Philippines. So at 6 centers, 3 countries, we are training our nurses to get educated on German language and then skills to move abroad. But while we're doing so, in the context of skilling, so this online, offline is one sort of such difference. The second difference is, I said this time I don't want to give any money to these big tech companies for marketing, because I've paid and burned a lot in the process. And therefore, this time is a lot more with partnerships, collaboration with universities, nursing colleges, and accessing candidates via that, because we don't need the kind of volumes that we need in the context of UpGrad. So I think those two are definitely a big difference with the way we built UpGrad versus BorderPlus. But here in our journey to your first question of nurses, they come and learn with us for about 8-9 months. They get the German language skills, and that's why they will sort of find their right outcomes there as well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And where do you see this going? Like, what's your vision with this?
See, I think there are multiple ways in which you can articulate the vision, that you can say, I want to send about 100,000 people abroad every year and so on and so forth. I think those are a very good vision statement to have. And I think from a team's perspective, it's important. If you have to put it, vision or mission, whatever that you want to call it, is that BorderPlus should be the platform of choice, a trusted platform for anybody thinking of global mobility. Because
across professions.
Across professions. Okay, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the best acquisition channel to acquire a nurse who's looking at going internationally, let's say in Kerala?
I can think of 2.
Yeah.
One is, let's say, search queries. I'm guessing they will be
on
searching
Google,
about this on
etc.
Google. Yeah, so one can be that.
Yeah.
Second can be, I also think these are smaller communities, the doctor communities, nurse, especially the local ones, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just checking in with people over a WhatsApp group.
Correct.
These are two things that
community,
I can think
build
of.
communities or build sort of marketing platform. One of the largest
I don't know if this is correct.
No. I'll give you one of the largest places where people identify nurses who are looking at going abroad are through Sunday Mass.
Oh.
So the large Sunday Mass happens, and the father comes and says, if you guys want to build a career, Germany, here's Father Sebastian, talk to Father Sebastian and he will help you out. And that person will then connect to an agent. This agent will be in a small town. That small town agent will talk to a big town agent in a bigger city. That big city agent will talk to a sub-agent in Germany. The sub-agent will talk to an agent in Germany. An agent will talk to a recruiter. So there are 5 people in this system. And then one guy suddenly comes up, okay, but now we do need to do some work. Now we have gotten a job. How do I solve for it? Then they say, okay, now if you want to solve for it, you need to teach them German. Then the 6th person comes into the system. Okay, now where's the party? He said, okay, this is the party. This is where you need to teach German. He comes and starts teaching German. No incentive to send the person abroad. So therefore, the system ends up getting broken to a very large extent. And that's where, for us to reach out to these consumers and these nurses, you need to find more credible and trustworthy plays or sort of ways where they trust the person, like they trust the church, because the church will never suggest them something wrong, and they will come up with some right advice, etc. So for us also, that's the thing that we need to work on. How do I get the right trusted platforms?
Wow, that's brilliant. And like you said, and like we discussed earlier, right? Like these are sectors where trust is paramount.
Yeah.
There's the one thing that you wouldn't want to break. But how do you think about global mobility in today's times?
Yeah, very important question. Very important question. When you don't have H1B,
where immigration
all whatever,
anti-immigration sentiment is on the rise globally. Across countries, we see these protests coming up, laws becoming more stringent, and preference being given to own nationals, and rightly so for them. But how do you think about this?
So there are 2-3 ways that I look at this problem statement. One is that in the journey of political spectrum, there's a cycle. There is going to be a right-wing rise, and then there's going to be a change in the sort of regime. And across the world, if you would have seen that in the current days, most of the places you have a different kind of government coming in, which are mostly more extreme, more right-wing, etc., which happens. I think when you get too lenient, you need to get too strict. When you get too strict, then you get too lenient. But if you look at the history, the number of Indians going abroad, it's not that now is the change in regime, right? I mean, when a few changes happened in Canada about 7-8 years back, Canadian numbers dropped. Changes happen in the UK, that dropped. Racism in Australia, that number dropped.
Yeah.
But if you look at the overall number of Indians going abroad, it has never dropped. So Indians are going abroad because talent requirement is there.
Yeah.
So if UK shuts down, another country wins. If US has shut down, this year Germany has received the highest number of students coming to Germany for education. While one or two countries will go through counter-cyclical arrangement, the other countries which have not gone through that will see an uptake, and the overarching number sort of continues moving up. Today's era, yes, there is going to be ups and downs, and some countries will cut it down, but some other countries will benefit. So that's one bit of it. So you need to have, as you're building a business or a business model, you need to be well diversified, not to put all eggs in one basket, so that the fluctuation can impact your business. The second thing, Sanya, is that you need to understand that it's a much bigger macro trend.
Yeah.
A much bigger macro trend is that there's a significant drop in reproductivity rates across most of the emerging developed markets, and the number of people entering the workforce is much lower than the number of workers who are retiring. To give an example of Germany, there are about net in the last every year, the number of nurses that are entering the workforce versus the number of nurses that are coming out. There's a gap in domestic nurses of about 20 to 30,000. So there are 30,000 lesser nurses entering than number of nurses retiring domestic.
Wow.
And that gap has to be fulfilled by international nurses. That's the first phenomenon that is happening. The second is, because of the declining reproductivity rates, the average age of the society is also aging.
Yeah.
So now they're at 60s, 70s, and so on and so forth. And therefore, the number of nurses required per capita of the population is also increasing. So while there's a declining number, if the society was flat, then it's okay. Jo bhi niche ja rahe, then you replace it with international nurses. Not only you have to replace the international domestic nurses delta, but you have to add for the higher nurse ratio that is required because of the aging population. And in those two factors is a economic factor, and sometimes you can put all these constraints around, look, AI is going to be bad for society, so I'll ban AI. But if the economic factors are strong, you just cannot find a way of stopping it.
No, that's brilliant. And this is what will enable them to have exponential outcomes and an exponential change.
Yeah.
Right?
And they should be seen differently. They should be seen that if they are BorderPlus nurses or if they are nurses from India, they're different. They're not the same set of nurses that you see in the market. They know German really well. They have practiced German really well. They don't spend time in doing these work which are not patient focused. And I think technology will play a lot of role. Tomorrow, maybe we get robotic nurses, but we will bring empathy, etc. So I think a whole lot of thought process has to be put in if you have to think of the next 10, 15, 20 years of timeline. Because as a founder, you should not just come with thinking what the next 3 to 5 years will be, which is okay for you to have an execution plan, an operating plan. But from a vision perspective, just think slightly longer term, because that's where you will start realizing that maybe all these are building blocks for something bigger. Or how do you sort of build your infrastructure such that not only are you ready for the next 3 months, 6 months, which is your business plan and targets, but for a 5-year period, which is what you're working towards, but for a 20, 30-year period, because that's where you will start realizing the real true value of what you're building and to start with as well.
Yeah, like you said, it's anyways a patient outcomes industry.
It's a 20-year overnight journey. That's what I call it as entrepreneurship, that you have to work on it, at it, and be at it, and don't take a rain check to do something else.
That's a great advice for young founders as they step into this journey. And you're also, I think, leveraging tech in a brilliant way to create the exponential outcomes while staying true to your core, that this is education, this is
skilling
upskilling at the end of the day, and tech is an enabler.
Yeah.
Taking a slight segue, right, which is also more relatable to other sectors, global GTM has been a challenge
Very
for
big challenge, Indian
most
founders.
companies, whether you're building in SaaS, whether you're building in AI, whether you're building in education, right? Most founders have to go global because of know the revenue requirements, etc., and the pricing power. How do you really crack a global GTM in your perspective? Because it's one of the toughest challenges I see.
I'm going to say one controversial statement, but I'm still going to say that I think B2B business or B2B SaaS business in India is an oxymoron. You can't build a strong B2B business, enterprise business in India for multiple reasons, because of the price point and commercial. Therefore, for a lot of founders, building a B2B SaaS business needs to be something that they are looking at from a global market perspective, because of the monetization and the amount that is there. The reason why it is a bit of a challenge is because some of these founders, they don't want to move to the US. And therefore, you have to be in the destination market rather than in the core market. And then for you will ask me in the mind, we are giving this advice, but you are in India. And how are you building this? And that's why when we started, my co-founder is in the UK and Germany. So he travels and he sort of ensures that everything in the European market is taken care by them, while we're working on sourcing and training the nurses in the Indian context. But you have to be where the customers are. There, you have to be where the consumers are. There's a team of ours, our product managers, for the last 1 month, they have been daily going to nursing homes and hospitals and wearing the nurse overhaul and spending night shifts in nursing homes just to see how nurses behave. If you don't do these, it gets very challenging to set the GTM in this way, in the context of what you're asking for. That you can't build from here thinking that you know what the ecosystem is. So that's one big problem. I have met multiple founders who said, okay, I'm selling to the US, sir. I said, तो अभी तुम कब जाओगे US में? I said, अभी तो देखा नहीं है, visa का problem है. I will take some time. One of you have to shift to the US. Unless you do that, it's very difficult to build that business there. The second interesting thing that sort of for us that we are trying to solve for is sometimes when you have to get in, it's very difficult for you to do organic, and it depends upon the businesses, right? I mean, there are certain businesses which are very fragmented. There are certain businesses which are very consolidated. There are certain businesses which are digital or analog but not yet turned digital. So for founders to get a step in the door, what they try doing is they knock on the doors, and they knock on the doors and say, okay, use my product and then give me a license fees for using my product. And that knocking on the door takes a lot of time, and it's frustrating because you're knocking on the doors and saying, look, use my agent, and the guys were saying, look, no, I don't have that. We're doing it right now. I think where we have been lucky is instead of knocking on the doors, we have taken a slightly more roll-up approach that we are acquiring contracts and we are buying out contracts. So we are saying, okay, if you have a contract with this hospital and if you do not have the bandwidth of serving it, give it to me and I will pay you a certain amount of money to take over the contracts. Going through the knocking on the doors and the feet on street kind of model, maybe the founder should think about whether there are other innovative ways of accessing that contract, whether it is via partnership, that I don't go knocking on the door, but I go to SAP and sign up a deal with SAP, or I work with an existing large platforms where I can integrate, or I buy out contracts. So the GTM could be a function of all those things. And many founders sometimes think the only way that I can do a GTM is knocking on the doors. And therefore they want these connects. Okay, I'm going to the US, can you connect me to this person? But nobody has come and asked me that, okay, why don't you connect me to Salesforce? And if you enter Salesforce, then you have a full product suite. And in the US, some great companies I've seen, they have only built the first 18 months to 24-month journey with one partner and not gone out to acquire customers on their own. And then you can acquire customers directly on your own slightly later. So I think those combination of where are you domiciled and where are you working out of, and a function of knowing the GTM in a slightly more nuanced way, that is not just one way of getting the contracts and building the product, is critical. And I think the beauty today in the context of AI era is that the per seat model is dead. You don't have to charge 30 euro, 50 euro, 100 euros a seat. It is like electricity. आपने जितना use किया, आप मुझे उतना pay करो. So you have a powerful play today that you can expand the pricing, and while you can offer them at 30 euro or 50 euro per person or $50 per person, but if the usage is higher, you can move it to about $100 and $200. So I think pricing again plays a very important part in how you look at GTM in the global market, because today, I don't think there's any reason why an Indian founder should shy away from raising the pricing if the usage is much higher.
Yeah, actually, I think that thought process and that ideology that it has to be the cheapest or it has to be low cost.
Yeah, it should not be the case. It should not be there right now. I think last week when they were doing the OpenAI demo day, they had put across people who have taken $1 trillion of tokens and trillion tokens, billion tokens, and tens of millions of tokens. I could see so many Indian startups listed in that name who are using those tokens and building it across. And if you are creating a playbook which you understand the market, people are willing to pay this thing, because in today's world, AI is not going after productivity. AI is just going after salaries. So it is a replacement of salaries, and there's unlimited potential of what you're building in this ecosystem right now.
That's brilliant. I mean, and like you said, right, I think partnerships, just going back to what you said, partnerships also become a better and maybe a faster way of understanding local context. Because let's say you've spent 20 years or 30 years or 40 years in India, right? how do you get local context fast
Yeah.
in different countries? Partners can actually help you do it
much faster.
much faster.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you don't
Especially
have
in
to.
sectors like healthcare. Like
yeah.
we're so nuanced, like healthcare, financial services, some of these sectors change a lot
Correct.
depending on the geographical context.
And the thing is, with these partners, you have access to customers. So as a founder, you can't do 2 things or 10 things at one go. You have to do a few things really right.
Yes.
So if you're in the product dev mode, then partner with somebody for distribution. And then make the distribution your proprietary distribution as you go along. But once you've figured out the product is well settled and the distribution model has worked, then build a proprietary distribution model as well in the process. So I know it's easier said than done, but for founders, there's no better time to build from India for the world at this point of time.
Interesting. How do you think about fundraising, especially like noticing how you went about it at UpGrad?
Yeah.
You don't seem to have too many investors on the cap table. What would be your advice to early stage founders when they think about fundraising?
So the framework should be very different for different kind of business that you're building. If it's a very capital intensive business, then you would like to get in investors who have the appetite to be with you for a very long period of time. I do not mean that just be with you from a fund life cycle perspective, but they are able to come to the next round, the next round, because you need to lock in those set of investors, because then only you will feel comfortable as you're going around with this. It is also a double-edged sword that you get an investor who can be with you and doubling down. And let's say you mess up on one time, no other new investor will come, because the other investor will ask you this question, that is the first investor putting in the money in the next round? And you will say, no, he is not or she is not. And then you will say, okay, then I'm also not putting in. But traditionally, that's what I've seen, that if capital is a moat, by capital, a moat means that, look, you can invest heavily and outspend or out discount some of your competitors, like what's happening in the context of these maid services. The people are coming in and offering maids at homes. Their capital is important, because you will have to invest heavily, get this thing done. I think the last I was reading up, that Urban Company has mentioned that the next year numbers will be lower than the previous year number as per the listing guidelines, because they're going to invest heavily. So if capital is a moat, then you need the right kind of investors who can be with you for a very long period of time. The second framework for one to think is that raise it for at least having a bare minimum of 36 to 48 month visibility. And I'm slightly longer than the traditional guidelines. The people give 24-month visibility. I would say start thinking of the next round of raise when you are 24 months of visibility. Because if you don't have a 36 months plus visibility, you will be constantly moving in a fundraise mode, which means that yes, your ability to raise 5 million, 10 million, 2 million, 3 million is what you will raise. The thing that is in your hand is how much you want to burn. So therefore, don't get into a play where you have raised enough and then you burn so much in monthly basis that suddenly your visibility for the funding or the amount of capital that you have is less than 24 months. If it is less than 24 months, then you have to raise it again. And I think founders sometimes make a mistake. They'll start looking at fundraise 12 months of runway, which is not enough time in today's context, because raising capital is, it requires to go through the entire sort of rigmarole, etc. And I think at UpGrad, we were fortunate because Ronnie, my co-founder, had the initial capital that he had put in. So we never raised capital for the first 5-6 years of our journey. And then when we raised capital, we were very clear that we will bring in people who have slightly long-term mindset. By that, I don't not mean doubling down, but just long-term mindset. Unko paisa wapas nahi chahiye jaldi, because education is a patient business. And that's why we got Temasek, we got IFC, because these guys are patient capital and they collaborate very closely with the founders. And the other philosophy that we had was, we don't want too many people on the cap table. Because if you start seeing too many people on the cap table, getting the ROFR, the ROFO, the drag, the tag, everything gets very, very painful. And sometimes as founders, initially they feel that sabko leke aate hain, it will look very good and we will have many investors. I personally prefer cap tables which are much more fewer investors holding a larger chunk, because then incentives are much strongly aligned. And that's why even at BorderPlus, we have one investor coming in. We have some angels. With most angels, we have done it as part of these AIF entities, so that on the cap table, there's only one entity, and not having too many sort of long set of cap tables, because as you get towards IPO and so on and so forth, that's the way it starts hurting you, because you have to clear up the cap table, get a different sort of investor. If one person says no, then it does not end up becoming clear. So for me, I prefer much cleaner, shorter cap table. It's bad for angel investors to invest, but I would still advise founders that If you are getting many angels, then put it under the angel list or the infinite club, etc. variety, because at least when you're cap table, there's one entity and not multiple entities.
Too many chickens spoil broth.
Very. Yeah. It's not right thing for the company. It's not right for the founders. You end up spending more time responding to each one of them versus focusing on getting a business done, which I feel is much. I would prefer it that way, and that's my personal preference. It's just too much of bandwidth goes into managing investors versus too much of bandwidth going into managing customers.
I think there are a lot of founders that I've seen who are constantly in the cycle of fundraising, and then they get distracted also from the core. So how do you cope up with failure? Because setbacks, failures are happening in all of our lives, not just in founders, right? What's your reset protocol, if I may?
There's no coping up with failure. Coping up when it happens. I mean, how do you cope up with an injury when you are practicing, or how do you cope up with I don't know, a car accident when it happens? I think these are part and parcel of, if you are doing it, it will happen. So you have to just assume that it's a part and parcel of your life, and there's nothing to be coping up with it. I think, look, the point of coping up happens when you feel that it was not in your control. And when you start building that mindset that it was not in my control, the bigger question to ask is, first of all, I think that thought should not come in that why is it not in your control? It should be in your control. And you should have a certain sort of guardrails to cover that control. So far, I think I've gone with the mindset that if there is a failure, if there is success, everything was in my control. I've never felt that in a business that we are in at UpGrad, there were multiple regulatory issues also, because we're in the education sector. And the regulatory framework will come up with newer surprises, like in fintech. But you do need to feel that, okay, you have thought about it earlier, and therefore it was in your control. The more you start thinking it was not in your control, then the coping mechanism is more important. And therefore, as a founder, if you start believing that things are in your control and you have figured it out, you have thought about it, I think the coping does not come up. It's part and parcel of, it's like breathing. How do you deal with breathing? Breathing is natural. So coping up of failure is natural to when you're building something as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, or as a professional as well.
Very interesting. And how do you spend, let's say, your weekends? What are some rituals that you have?
Ritual for me, running is a big ritual. I think fitness, running are two of my most important things to start the day. I do long distance running. I do strength training, so alternate days. So 6 days I do. From a fitness perspective, 1 day I rest. But for me, the best coping up mechanism, if you have to sort of take it, that if I feel it was not in my control and I need to cope up, I'll go for a very long run. Then I'll go for a longish run just to introspect and think. Because I think when you're running, then a lot of introspection happens. There's a difference between running and playing, right? And when you're playing, your mind is very agile. Because there are surprises. Somebody is hitting you from here, somebody is smashing from some other side. So the mind is trained to be agile when you're playing some sports. But when you're running, it's a calming and more meditative factor. That it's not that you're surprised ki road kharab hoga. Of course, road will be bad, then you will be surprised with that. But you're more sort of centering yourself. And for me, that definitely helps from not just from coping perspective, but just ensuring that there's a longevity of career, there's a longevity of your sharpness and alertness when you're running a business. Because sometimes those things don't hit you at the time of run. I'll give you a simple example. If I don't run for a period of 3-4 days, the days for me end up getting shorter because I start feeling much more tired, much more sort of low on energy. And therefore, for me, running is like getting energy, which is slightly counter, but it helps overall for me to be much more sharper, much more alert in a longer term period.
Yeah, I mean, I love how running is also picking up in India as a community. Like, I love how we're going more towards fitness.
A lot,
personally, I think, like you said about the meditative state of mind, right? I think it brings a lot of focus.
A lot of focus, You can think a lot, nobody to disturb you. No phone calls come, nobody can sort of pick you up. On this running thing, I'll tell you, very interesting. There's a very long run that happens, but 400 people from India flew to South Africa to run a race for 90 kilometers. 400 people.
Is this the Comrades Marathon?
And I would have never thought that these many people would travel from India to run in South Africa. Just complete madness. But to your point, it is slowly increasing. Running, cycling, pickle, paddle, and all those things are sort of picking up a lot. And it's a good thing because now people are taking health very, very seriously. And it is going to have a much bigger long-term impact in the way entrepreneurs come up, in the way business leaders come up, in the way professionals come up as well.
Yeah, on that note, I think we'll wrap up the conversation.
No.
Thank you so much
Perfect.
for taking out
Thank
the
you.
time. It was a very insightful conversation. You have very sharp insights.
No, thanks a lot
And,
for doing
yeah.
the research and asking the right sort of questions. Yeah.
No, that's the bare minimum. But thank you so much.
Thanks
Really
a lot.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.